Welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show. Today in episode 196, Jeff Selver joins me to talk about his book called The Rising. But first, let me tell you a little bit about my guest. With an MBA and a passion for management and leadership, Jeff worked in banks, corporate training as a motivational speaker, and he taught mindful leadership. He has also been under the tutelage of a Vedic teacher for over 20 years, where he learned Vedic philosophy and meditation. When his memories of alien contact surfaced, Jeff began presenting on his contact events in UFO groups, sharing his story in detail, and providing research and corroboration with other experiencers. In December of 1997, Jeff experienced the Rising, which was an agreement with gray aliens to discover his soul. The Rising required him to take a leap of faith, sell all his possessions, and begin a life traveling from place to place. What unfolds is truly an epic adventure of removal from society and living close to nature, all the while having contact events with gray aliens without his knowing. In summary, his book tells of 26 contact events with gray aliens, told in amazing detail and spread out from the years 1993 to 2017. Fundamentally, Jeff was shown that what humans understand about spirituality, life after death, dimensions, God, the soul, and psychic powers are just the beginning of what these beings are all about. And their capacity, understanding, and utilization of these is much greater than humans can imagine. Jeff's story shows that the only way we will ever be able to understand the grays is to understand the power of our own personal spiritual potential. All of the links are featured below in the description. Thank you in advance for liking, commenting, subscribing, and please do share this content with your friends. I'm also very happy to announce I can now accept channel memberships so that you can take advantage of my perks. So without further ado, we'll bring Jeff on. Hi, Jeff. How you doing today?
Good, Karen. How are you? Yeah.
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
oh,
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on so much. And boy, things are really ramping up in the public arena with sightings. And
Yeah.
they're only now just starting. It's just starting to dawn on them that a lot of these um, um, beings are interdimensional. Now, you and I have known this for quite some time.
Right.
And I'm wondering if you want to speak a little bit about what's going on and how your experience, what part of your experiences were also interdimensional.
Yeah. What part of my, sorry, the question is being what part of my experiences? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So when I had the memories come out, um, I had memories of, it's actually really wild, seemingly physical contact. How they were obscuring the memories was very confusing to me. And I never really understood how they were able to do it. But otherwise, I was dealing with crafts. I was going into crafts. I was talking to a physical entity that was the same entity repeatedly. And it wasn't till when my memories had come out, it was partially instigated by UAP that were in my area. So there's a whole story all laid out in my book. But the gist of it is that um, these objects had come back that I had associated with a certain period of my life that was very bizarre, and it was my traveling period when I was a younger kid, a younger teenager, or in my early 20s, I guess you could say. But for me now, all this distance, it still is when I was a kid. But in my 20s, I went traveling and I saw objects in the sky, and so they came back, and this behavior that they displayed to me here presently in as the memories were coming out was very weird. It was not like physical craft. Though it seemed to display physical craft, it was highly linked to me. So I would be thinking in the moment about UAP or aliens, and then an object would fly by. I actually asked it to it gave me a command once. So it was telepathically communicating with me, and it gave me a command, and I said on the spot, show yourself to me. And when it did, the object that flew by my window was like a weird, obscured orb. Could have been like a weird meteor flying sideways, could have been a weird I don't even know. It just, the way it responded and the way it seamlessly was in my environment while then showing itself and then disappearing at the same time, was very bizarre. It was the manner with which it was communicating and interacting with me as I was gaining the memories was showing me how dimensional, I guess it was. And I was leaning towards paranormal because at that point in my life, I'd already had experiences with ghosts in some bizarre circumstances, but I had actually interacted with what I consider to be people that passed on, whether they were loved ones, but also I would have the same experiences with ghosts. And then just in the world of synchronicities and the world of believing in the higher self or believing in God, the world can be very magical. And this was displaying similar type of properties to that, where it would respond to my thoughts, or there'd be a synchronicity and then there'd be a UFO. So it wasn't just a UFO and a random event. It was a synchronicity that put me there, that made me look up at that weird direct moment. And then there ends up being a metallic object. So it was the way that they were displaying themselves and also appearing and disappearing so seamlessly with not just with my environment, but even with my thinking. So the way they would just show up right when I was thinking about them was very bizarre. And that had me a bit weirded out. And then when they started to be in my environment, so physically here, they're invisible. And I experienced full-on poltergeist activity, things falling off of counters, trying to get my attention about something I was thinking about. Classic poltergeist, but simultaneously with a message. So it wasn't very haunting. It wasn't traumatizing me. It was actually soft and communicating about something I was thinking about in the moment. So if I was thinking about something in the book or something that happened to me, the entity would communicate with a poltergeist activity in the environment. And that's when I really understood that this was much more beyond than what we humans are willing to even grasp, because we don't have a frame of reference for things that are paranormal except for ghosts. So the idea that a highly intelligent entity is going to communicate or operate in this way is just a whole other bag. And it also started to explain to me why humans don't really understand this or don't know what this is yet, or why it's here, but we still haven't really proven it's here. And then, that really started to make a lot of sense. And it also exposed, when I was having contact, that I did have some weird, bizarre events, and would explain how they were interacting with my life and how they were able to keep the memories so obscured by being this kind of phased, I guess, right? That's how I kind of think of it, that they're phased in a dimensional way. Simultaneously, it's consciousness. So they easily could pass off as being spirits, as the angels, or, but then simultaneously they are operating craft, and they seem to be much more intelligent than any spirit that we would know who had passed on. This is like a scale of intelligence that is like as if they're able to control it. That's the weird difference about these entities. I'm convinced they're space-time architects, able to create synchronicities, and explain a lot about my personal experience also. So it's just that's the gist of it. The whole dimensional side came out with the memories, because when you just look at the story, it kind of looks like it's all physical events, and it is, except for even how they were doing them is quite bizarre. And there's a couple weird moments where I'm outside on a planet and I can breathe the air, and I know the environment is toxic, but I'm phased in some way, but there's no communication with me at the time what was going on. So they don't explain to me the dimensional stuff like ever in my contact events. They just let me be a 20-year-old existing with them or being on craft, and then they're not really explaining too much else. And though they're giving me information about things, they're not explaining any of the dimensional content. And it's all stuff I put together when my memories come out and the way they behave with me presently. So it's very fascinating.
So I want to point out too that you have a YouTube channel and you've been producing some really awesome content lately where you do deep dives into different sections from your book. And now I could have this wrong, so please don't be put on the spot.
No,
But
it's okay.
a lot of my experiences include things like visions, dream states, things like that. I'm wondering if you would identify as also having those experiences and what maybe a couple of the teachings you received from those.
Yeah. Well, a good one is so one just happened very recently. So I do 100% understand the dream state stuff. Or sorry,
Hmm.
I won't say I understand it, but I have experienced it. Um,
Hmm.
um, so definitely there's contact. I think that there's 100% physical contact. You
Hmm.
definitely have uh, like phased, I guess you could say, out of body or astral contact. You have
Hmm.
telepathic contact, and dream contact isn't necessarily any of those. And the entities can also, yeah, but aliens are not the only ones who can do this. Like gurus can do this, and someone from Tennessee, Kentucky, Bigfoot is here. Bigfoot's been able
Hmm.
to known to do this. Ghosts can do this. So
Hmm.
you're in a dimensional state, and you can interact with a person who's sleeping, and you can enter their dreams. And the aliens 100% have entered my dreams, and they communicate through dreams. Yes, and I consider those dreams and not the same thing as my physical contact.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, they have 100% communicated through dreams. An example, a really funny and interesting example, is with all this commotion going on. I guess just even a couple days ago, 4 or 5 days ago, um, people are. I have some experiencer friends. We're keeping an eye on all the public stuff and what's going on, and they're sending me links. And with all the the drones over top of New Jersey airports or military installations, and the UK is being bombarded with them too. And at first, I
Hmm.
was apprehensive because some of the videos appear to be from different times, so not presently, but they're coming out presently. So, and
Hmm.
also we don't, very typically airplane. And then there's the Manchester airport one that got really famous really quickly, where there's an orb on the tarmac, and the guy filmed it in the air. So, but I was pointing out to someone the airline pilot who put that post up admitted that was they see weird things all the time. So his
Hmm.
timing to post it was that he's comfortable to do it, but it wasn't necessarily something about Manchester airports now swarmed with UFOs. So I was trying to like be apprehensive. I was being on the cautious side to making a large statement that there's something grand going on, and he was leaning towards something more grander going on. And it's kind of funny that I was like debating with him, because then the dream I had that night was very weird. And the dream I had was I was with a group of friends, and it's not worth going into all the detail. Bottom line is that someone I was with, I don't even remember the person, they were dealing with this gang. So all of a sudden I'd like driven up beside a gang, like rough dudes, and someone was on the phone. Anyway, the bottom line is that the guy who I was with said, "If you don't talk to this guy, I'm going to shoot you here." And the scale of violence, like, all of a sudden ramped up. All of a sudden, I was about to be in a very violent scenario, and then out of nowhere, a UFO shows up in my dream, and it distracts everybody. And so it's a very weird thing. And these were three orbs, and they were twirling, and I was blown away. Pulled up my phone to film it because I have a whole thing about filming them, and then I woke up from the dream, so I couldn't even film them in my dream. It's kind of funny, but what was really interesting was the feeling here was really clear. Actually, it was a communication
Hmm.
that this activity was. I'm certain they're going to be public soon, and I
Hmm.
think they really don't like the violence. They don't even want any potential for violence.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
when I was coming out with with my second edition of my book, I got a distinct message from them too. Like very telepathic one night, just very condensed, and they were like, promote peace. Like, when the transition happens, talk about peace. Make sure you're talking about peace. Make sure people know it's going to be peaceful when we make the transition happen, because people are
Hmm.
like very terrified. And so they really want to emphasize nothing to be scared of, peaceful, don't ramp up like military, like peace, peace, peace. And the entities
Hmm.
are very, they're very hypersensitive. They're telepathic. They can read everything. I know
Mm-hmm.
they get disturbed by violence, and I don't mean disturbed as in the way we would get disturbed emotionally, but they just, they don't want anything to do with it. And
It's a completely foreign concept to them. It's
right.
very, people don't realize how kind of brutal we still are, you know?
Yeah. And I think we may have a tendency on their behalf to react with military to
Yeah.
them. And I think that there's a whole thing where they're like, no, like just stop, like almost like grow up. There's a weird thing about it, and they really want to emphasize that. And I think that there's something going on here with this activity around these military installations being tied to, like, they won't even let us get there to a point where we're agitated so much that we start something up. They really are trying to emphasize peace and peace and peace over and over and over. And I think that the human tendency is to lean towards mistrust and violence.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's something about this activity and this weird dream that they gave me that was linked. So yeah, but it's always intuitive, and you have to sit there and discern for yourself what that all means. But yeah, I definitely get dream content, and I get a lot of understanding from them through dreams. And
Mm-hmm.
I can give you another example, if this is entertaining for you.
Sure, sure.
Yeah. Well, one of them is really, I still think about it to this day, and it really altered my perspective of the phenomenon. Um, so I have a guru, right? I have a Vedic
Mm-hmm.
guru, and the role of the Vedic guru versus the role of the aliens. It's very interesting. A lot of people don't ask about it, but there is definitely a conflict between the two. And anyone who understands truly what a guru is would get that there would be a conflict with a disciple who's experiencing these highly dimensional entities. And so one night I had a dream, and in the dream, I'm driving. My elder, the gray alien that I interact with telepathically, who I see as orbs, is driving the car. My wife is the passenger. I'm in the back seat. The car's driving, and we go over a balloon. At first, I'm like, what is this weird tall object? That's a really large balloon. Basically, it starts distorting. And I'm like, it's a UFO. It's a UFO built, doing this weird contortion thing. And I start wanting to film it. But then the entire world, like everything, we start levitating. And we kind of pull out from the car, and we're levitating, and everything's falling apart. All of reality is falling apart, and a gray alien is standing behind me, like floating, like a tall gray, and is floating. And I'm aware that the gray alien is making all of reality fall apart, like just this type of control of reality that I don't even think we get that they have yet, that there's this
Mm-hmm.
kind of reality creator thing going on here. And then my wife looks back at me and says, I thought you said they were more powerful than the gurus. And I woke up, and it was like a really wild dream, and it really had me twisted up about it, because I'm very aware of what the gurus are, and I'm pretty convinced that they have, by being concentrated in the physical realm as their role as this kind of intense angel higher self thing. I think they developed something that is has more power. And it's very interesting game here. Not that I believe there's higher powers and lower powers fully like that, but something is to be said about the development of putting yourself in the 3D world and living it out,
Mm-hmm.
and then while still being the higher of the higher realms. And then the grays, what's going on here? And I've come across a couple understandings from other different types of people, and I'm convinced of this, that they're actually a lot more reality creators than we think they are. And
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
dream just stuck with me. That as a like that was a message. It felt like an alien dream. I call them the alien dreams, and they're distinct. They're always a bit more pronounced. They're more, you can almost touch the things in the dream. They're of a lucidity that my other dreams don't contain, and that's always regarding the aliens, and it always has a very strong message. So yeah, this is for me something where they're communicating to me, and I was stuck with it. I'm convinced that that's how they start. That's how they do the synchronicities. Some
Mm-hmm.
kind of space-time architecture thing going on here. And so I never experienced that firsthand, except for the synchronicity stuff. But this
Mm-hmm.
was a level up, that there's something here where they're kind of matrix creators, or very aware, so powerful that they could, make your life just dissolve around you. All the fabric of all the physics is just dissolving, and you're the only thing that's left. So very epic. So my dreams, yeah, I definitely get what I call the alien dreams. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. And my own experience with ETs, I filtered it through my own understanding, my
Yeah.
own perceptual arena, and it seems quite different. But then listening to you talk, it's not that different
Right.
because I'm actually convinced that I'm in bed sleeping, and yet I'm aboard the big ship having absolutely physical experiences, being completely lucid and having all of these amazing experiences. But in my experience, similar to yours, is their abhorrence for violence. In fact, many of
Yeah.
them, I think the ones that have contact with Earth and humans are aware, but there are many worlds and many beings out there that have no concept for it. They have evolved past it a
Yeah.
long, long time ago,
Yeah.
and they're more into what I would call the magic of reality, which leads me to my next discussion. I'm wondering if you have done any research into simulation theory. Now, simulation theory doesn't mean that it's not real. It's absolutely real, but it's not real the way we think of the three-dimensional. And that really seems to um, go along with the transdimensional reality, and even what you said about how the
Yeah.
grays may be reality builders. Have you done any research into simulation? What's your thoughts on it?
Oh, of course, 100%, and all the evidence for me, if you look down that road, is pretty consistent that the universe is a simulation. Um, so, yeah, I've written actually a section of it in a book of mine, and I do 100% subscribe to it. And it also
Mm-hmm,
it's right down with the Vedas. The Vedas
mm-hmm,
knew that the world was an illusion and that the
mm-hmm,
consciousness is the only thing that's real. So that was bang on. That was always bang on with that. We were kind of following that in my spiritual group for decades when it first came out. Nick Herbert was the first one that really. Though there's the holographic principle that does a really amazing job. Nick Herbert was a physicist himself, and so he was one of the first ones to write about it in terms of quantum reality from the Copenhagen interpretation, which is the main body, the main main body that deals with quantum physics at the time, the main scientific body, and it was understanding that consciousness creates reality. That there's this kind of overarching structure going on where a non-locality is the basis of everything, and it was explaining spirituality to us in the very early days. So all of that just makes a lot of sense that when you're having remote viewing, you're experiencing non-locality, you're having no space, no time events, you're having past life awareness. It could include, maybe it could be a part of non-locality. So it makes sense to explain things that way. And Michael
mm-hmm.
Talbot from the Holographic Universe does a really good job combining those two as well, that consciousness is real and the physical universe is the hologram. I 100% subscribe to that. I think all of it fits. If visioning, God,
Yeah,
all of it fits under an umbrella of a simulation theory. And yeah, and even the aliens, everything going on with the aliens, everything going on with the aliens, and their ability to enter dream states with us, or taking you and phasing you through a wall, right? Like these are all
yeah,
ways with which it could all fit under a holographic principle of an idea of a simulation theory. So I think that the evidence is pretty conclusive. I think the reality is, and Nick Herbert talks about this, we just don't know how to translate this stuff. We
yeah.
can
We
prove it.
don't have the conceptual
Yeah,
framework because we're born into a programmed, I call it a construct, and that awareness of all of that's been removed. So we don't have language to speak about it. So
yeah.
we're stumbling along trying to express ourselves. I guess the scientists could do it. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's all good. Totally, I'm bang on with what you're saying. Yeah, yeah. It's all just very fascinating, and I totally agree that I think the evidence is there, in that link is the problem. We don't have a clear way of internalizing it, and this always comes back to what consciousness is all about. And people have this is what the Upanishads are all about, and the Vedas are all about, and the Bhagavad Gita is all
Mhm.
about. That the human mind is the actual matrix creator. That's the only one going on here. There's not a government.
Mhm.
That's the government's playing their role because they're part of the mind too, and they're just doing everything that everyone's born into. The only matrix creator is the one that's in our head, and so
Mhm.
that's the real problem, is learning how to figure out how to get beyond it. And this is what meditation was always about. This is what the Vedas were always about. This is what gurus were always about. And so this is the type of stuff you need to apply when it comes to ideas of simulation theory, because the only way out is to get outside of the one piece of simulation, which is your brain. The physical tissue brain is just a part of the machine, part of the
Yep.
simulation. And so you have to figure out how to get beyond the physical tissue brain. And that's always what meditation was always about, was trying to get beyond those, the confines of your, actually the Vedas would just term it as the five senses, right? How to get, they have the whole construct that you're actually trying to get beyond, you know, all the ways that your brain has taken into reality, which is through your five senses. And now you have this other sense, or this other ability that you're trying to get beyond. And that's literally what they focus on. So very
Yeah.
powerful.
It sure is. It sure is. And all the pieces fell together when I started learning about simulation theory, and I went, "Oh, well, of course, that makes complete sense." And it also explains the Mandela effect. It explains manifestation.
Yeah.
I find, at least that for me, the trick is communicating with my subconscious, because my
Right.
subconscious, once it understands what I want, will give me anything, and I think it's very,
Right.
very powerful.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. You
just,
got it.
I just, sorry, Jeff. I just take a minute and say hi to a couple of the people in the
Sure.
chat. I want to say hi to Angel Wings. She is a channel member and very happy about that. And there's also Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot, who we mentioned. There's Pa Joe is on, and a few others who've been in and out. And I just want to acknowledge them before we continue. So, I am wondering what I have noticed. You know, these disclosure conferences they're having with the different branches of the government in the United
Oh yeah.
States.
Soul
There,
conference, that kind of stuff.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
always a military guy who is going, "This is a big threat to our military. This is causing problems with our flights and our pilots, putting them at risk." This is like always trying to whip up the fear that 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 this presence is going to somehow hurt the national defense of the United States. Ironically, I think if there was a big problem there, we would have seen it by now. I have not seen any reports of pilots accidentally crashing into what we call UAPs or UFOs. I mean, I don't, again, I think you're right. I think that most of humanity is seeing this as a very three-dimensional physical phenomenon. It's just starting to dawn on them that it's interdimensional. And my take on it is they're scared. They're scared because they don't have a clue what this is about. I
Yeah.
think partly why they don't have a clue is because they don't have the level of spiritual understanding that you need to wrap your head around it. So what I was wondering is, do you believe that they're going to try to do a so-called false alien invasion? Do you think they're gearing up towards that, or do you see it going off in a different direction altogether?
I don't see that. I don't see that. Now, when I hear this type of language, I think there's another purpose behind it. Lou Elizondo has actually clarified him talking about the phenomenon in terms of it being a threat, where he's
Mhm.
saying we have to make sure, you know, we're addressing this topic because it can run into an airplane, right?
Mhm.
And what's interesting about him approaching that, he actually has said, I'm not saying it's a threat, because I think he was kind of rousing some people up with this idea, should we be thinking about it as a threat or not? And he said,
Mhm.
I'm not saying it's a threat. I'm saying it has the potential to, yeah, it's sometimes interfering with our airplanes, or it's sometimes, you know, it's on our flight path. It's actually, and even with the drones, they're in restricted airspace, right? So it's the ones that are the drones that we're hearing about in the public now. So they keep doing what they want to, if you will, or even they're even having a test, you know, a test flight, and the UAP will be there. And so, yeah, from their mind frame, what I think they're doing is they're actually trying to say, if we don't find a way to get you roused up, you won't take it seriously. Because all that's going to happen is you're going to say, I don't know, that's a balloon, maybe. I don't know, it's a flare. So if you know that the guy who's driving the airplane is taking it seriously, and that the guy who's running the military is taking it seriously, or this whistleblower is taking it seriously, then you're saying, I guess this is serious. But if they didn't say that, there's no way the public would have anything to say. They would just be like, I guess you guys think it's an airplane. Maybe it's a bug on a, we've heard so many of these. We think it's a bug on, it's a bug on the screen of the drone that's filming this. And of course, those are all ridiculous ideas. And the pilots themselves get so shocked by what they're looking at. And we have their voices literally recorded into some of these videos that we have. So I think they do that on purpose to get us interested in it, because otherwise the human is, we just don't know. And the UFOs are obscure and subtle enough to not draw a lot of attention. So just being an orb, you don't know what you're looking at. I have a video of an orb on my YouTube channel, and I've had people look at that and they say, well, I don't know what that is. And so they're not saying, oh my God, it's a UFO. Oh my God, there's aliens behind that. They're saying, well, I don't know. And they literally, without wanting to know more, they'll just shut it down. And that's what humans do all over the place with all this content, because it's actually so subtle. You don't know what that thing is. And then if it's not really interfering with you, you just go about your life, which is sadly the human way. And we're very two-dimensional. If it's not my backyard, right? That's what the term is. If it's not my backyard, I'm not going to address it. And that's what I think they're trying to do, is kind of make it feel like it's in people's backyards. And then that's where the interest is being drawn into it. We have a UAP committee because they actually said people have died from this. And so there's a committee that got formed from it. So I think there's a level of urgency they need, but I'm not convinced that they believe, I'm convinced that they know it's coming, and I'm convinced that they know it's going to be here and it's going to interact with us. But all the dialogue doesn't reflect drumming up of fear. All the dialogue reflects, I think, the understanding that we have, that this is consciousness driven, that this is a grand awakening for humanity, that that's something around the corner that we don't know what it is. We are going to be scared when we get there, but it actually might be amazing and beautiful when we hit it. And here's an example of this. The slides from there's so much information going out. I can't keep up with it anymore. There's a new general who's a whistleblower. He's got white hair. He was the one on the SALT conference, and he confirmed Luis Elizondo is real, John Ramirez is real, Chris Mellon is real. All these guys are real, and I'm another guy, and he's this other military guy. And he had slides that he presented at the SALT conference, and those slides were leaked out. And in the slides, he's talking about experiencers. They're trying to make sense of the phenomenon. And so he's saying, what should we be taking from experiencers? How can we be learning more from experiencers? People are actually having contact with the entities. We have them, like Gary Nolan, right, has medical research that you expand consciousness with this phenomenon. They have medical application to it. Bob Bigelow, part of this whole process with a reverse engineering program, went and studied the afterlife, right? Now he's talking about the afterlife and aliens together. He was doing so on Jeffrey Mushlow's show. So they unequivocally know that this is consciousness related. And that's what I see with them. And I see them being military men trying to figure out how to mix these two things together and get the public interested into it, because I think they know it's coming. And that's the only reason you would do that too, that this phenomenon is changing humans. And now you have to figure out how to kind of embrace that and do that together. And I think a core group understand that. And even Ross Coulthart, he's right in line with all this stuff, repeating all their words, that this has something to do with the afterlife, that humans expand with consciousness. You got two other guys actually saying, Michael Hara and Ross Coulthart, both talking about how you need to have a level of consciousness to interact with their tech, all in line with experiencers, all in line with, stuff that you're talking about, stuff that I'm talking about. So I see them knowing that. And then I see them trying to gently tell humanity. And that's what I see too, is that there's a real problem with humans. I think there's a lack of control, actually. I think that's the big problem, is that they can't control humans. In that if you put out too much of this information too fast, with a small body who the 8 billion people can't verify, then you're going to have, groups come up that will 100% imagine it's a threat. And there's no way you could probably stop them from thinking it's a threat. And those are the real problems, I think, is that humans themselves can actually get this into a roused up state of fury. And I don't think the aliens have any other way of showing us that they're benevolent than just experiencing them firsthand. And when you are terrified of them, the first thing you don't want to do is experience them firsthand. So I think there's all these problems that are real big issues with the whole disclosure process. But I'm always a person who has faith. I do. I actually believe in everyone's best intentions. And I know there's a lot of talk about deception and all this stuff, and I get it. But I do think that they're doing the best they can with the systems that they're in. And I think that's one of the ways I like to frame it. And they may have some very deep knowledge about, here's another example, the rear admiral, who was part of the 4 whistleblowers for the Congress that just occurred, weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that rear admiral is quoted as saying in a podcast, and this was just a week before he went to the Senate, yes, we have to keep some of the UAP stuff confidential because it actually does interfere with our security, national security issues. But we are now aware of a greater reality, and the public needs to be aware of that. We have proven a greater reality exists, and the public needs to be aware of that, and we need to put that information out there for the public. So this is what I'm hearing that. I'm like, oh, bang on, right in line with everything I know, is that this is where this is going. This is going into, the elder called it the great, for me, my entity called it the great unveiling. And so that's our unveiling. It's not just, sure, a corruption unveiling, whatever unveiling you want to frame, but there's also your unveiling, your past lives. You've been living for thousands of years and you're not aware of it. And you just are part of a birth and death life cycle. And there's a whole you willingly putting you here the entire time. Even though you're suffering, there's a part of you saying, no, you're developing. Let's do it together. And your higher self is wanting you here. And you're unaware of so much of your own existence. And all of that's going to be exposed. Now, what the human does with it is a whole other game, but that is part of the development here, is that they have tech and you interact with that part of yourself that's aware of all this history. So, this is big. It's much bigger, and I do have faith. I do have faith, and it's because everything that they're saying is matching up from my personal experience with the entities.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Very, very interesting. Now, Jeff, I want to take a short break for a promotion. Sure. And when we come back, I'm wondering if you want to talk a little bit about the alien plan to build an enlightened city. I'd love to hear more about that.
Sure.
So we'll be right back. Just a short, less than 2-minute promotion, and then we'll be right back.
Sounds great.
Everybody thrives when we have a mission, and there is no greater mission than to become the change we wish to see in the world. This holiday season, share a gift certificate for my services, because sometimes the people we love need a little help from consultation and support. They may have discovered that this world is not what they thought it was, and recent global events have awakened them, and now they're feeling unsettled. Or some of your loved ones may have experienced the paranormal and feel isolated with their not so popular beliefs. It is a big shock to wake up and find that the old familiar world is gone. It can be disturbing to go down the various rabbit holes only to find that the information is difficult to digest and few people are willing to talk openly about it. Everybody would like to learn how to thrive in this new state of awareness as they discover that they are not conspiracy theorists. Everyone is now awakening, and once they find their way through it, there are many blessings waiting on the other side. My name is Karen Holton, and I offer vital services that may be just what many people need, and support for unique journeys into the weird and wonderful. Check out my Awakening Support and Ascension Consultation Services, created to support individuals with their chosen alternative realities and lifestyles, health and recovery, and their spiritual adventures. For more details, check out the various vital services found on my website, and be assured that I have found personal success with every category featured. My website is www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. That's KarenHolton healthcoach.com. Gift certificates are now available. And we're back. For those of you who have joined us later, well, anytime halfway through the show, whatever, I am talking with Jeff Selver. Jeff wrote the book, The Rising, and we're talking about his adventures and his take on, I guess, reality. And now we're going to jump a little bit into uh, the message that Jeff has for us about the alien plan to build an enlightened city on Earth. Jeff, what do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah. So my contact events largely were about this experiment they wanted to do with me. And it's the first 7. I have 26 contact events spread out over my life. The first 7 were this experiment they wanted to do with me. Then it changed my body, the experiment that they did. It was they helped me discover my soul. And when that occurred, it altered my DNA. I had physical changes in my body at the time. I recall those and I documented those. And then, but I didn't know the aliens were taking my biology during that time. And it got a bit hairy. It would. And there were times where I was fighting with them. And then they stopped. So they took a lot and then they stopped. And then they kept with me. And I didn't really know what was going on, but they kept coming back, actually. And all the biology stuff stopped. The 21st contact event, I'm shown hybrid babies, gray alien human hybrid babies. And I don't know what this is. And the two aliens I'm with at the time tell me, you'll one day be a part of this. I'm asking, like, why are you showing this to me? They say, you'll one day be a part of this. And then practically a year later, I'm back on craft. This time it's a base, actually. And I see the babies are growing up and they want me to play with them. And I could feel, and I knew at some point in this transaction that they were going to put these babies on planet Earth. They were developing a species, and I was a part of this process. And, it's hard to not feel kind of amazed that you were part of this. A lot of humans who aren't having contact, have a lot of negativity ideas about this stuff. But, like some of us, I bonded with these entities. And then I was a part of that hybrid program. And I didn't have the backlash that sometimes I can see people think that they should have. And I didn't have that backlash. I was like amazed at what was going on, that they didn't tell me this detail. They just kind of started presenting things as they were going on. And I didn't know what was going on. And now all of a sudden there's a hybrid babies. They come back in 2016 at that point. So that was 2001, when I saw the babies starting to grow up. And then 2016, they came back. And it was combined with them telling me, open your memories will be opened. We want you to write out what happened to us, what happened to you and us, into a book. So they actually instructed me to write a book. And when you do, tell them we're coming, was the idea. And then she produces an image into my mind. So it's like kind of telepathic transference. And so we get merged in our communication, and she's showing me an image. And yeah, it's not unlike the city that is right there. So it's very much like that city, glistening, metallic emerald was how I described it. And I could see within the city, like almost like zooming in or close up, were those baby hybrids now grown up. And so she's showing me they're walking around in the city, and they are human to some degree. Like they didn't look alien. In fact, they didn't even feel alien. They felt like humans that had something new in them. So there was this weird feeling that they weren't actually aliens. They were people. And they called them the new humans, is what they called them. So they were people. And they were also wearing t-shirts and pants. They weren't dressed in the coveralls or the space uniforms or capes or whatever they wear sometimes. Here they are dressed as people, as humans would be. And they were bald, and they had black eyes. And otherwise, they had like the normal dexterity of arms and legs and feet, like a human would. And so that was the large impression, was that tell them we're coming.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they actually didn't give me any other information about the city, oddly enough, except this contact events over the 26 have a bunch of bizarre linking up parts to this. So everything is very
Mm-hmm.
symbolic, the way they interact. They don't often speak directly in a very clear way that humans are used to. And in that strip of contact events, my 10th contact event, I saw a city that they had shown me on a hologram of, basically they were showing me planet Earth, and there was a giant city in the middle. And this was the new Earth. This was after a changeover. So they had shown me that the planet would suffer through some kind of, devastation. Basically, that humans were actually in part creating instability in the planet with the environmental degradation. And then the whole planet gets lit up on fire, and then basically everything redevelops. And it's a new frequency, if you will, a new changeover. And at the center of it was a massive city, dead center of middle of North America. And it was a circle. The whole city was a circle. So now in 2016, I'm not making the link. I'm only making the link when all the memories come out and you're like, whoa, they make this grand picture that spans over years. And that's exactly what happened here. So they're basically showing me a city in 2016 that they kind of showed me when I was a 20-year-old in 1998. And they're showing that this city is linked, and they're basically putting the two things together. And the other is that I'd gone to a city in my 8th contact event. So I physically go to a city, and a city on Venus. Sounds unbelievable. I guess it's a phased city. And I was in a city there. So I actually experienced it firsthand. And yes, you have to be like elevated consciousness to be there. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to be like open-hearted. And the person who was taking me was very kind and very sweet and very open-hearted, very friendly, and but more of an open, exposed heart than I think humans have. I think a type of
Mm-hmm.
telepathic or empathic exposure that humans are not used to, because we're such private
Mm-hmm.
individuals. We keep all of our feelings and thoughts together, and this was a type of exposure that is very shocking for humans, I think. And yet, when you're on that level with them, you feel right at home.
Uh-huh.
And so I went to a city. So I put a whole bunch of pictures together, including my entire time with their tech. So from the very first contact event all the way up to the 26, I'm constantly having different types of experiences with their tech. And I constantly am having soul tech or consciousness tech. And they have a variety of things that they did with me, showing me that this was all what this city would be. So they tell me we're coming. Here's a city. And then I spend the last chapter deducing, maybe some speculation, but deducing combined with all my experience, and I paint a picture of what I'm pretty certain the city will include. And then there was also telepathic communication with them after my memories had come out, and I was writing the book, and there were some things that they wanted me to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes like this: the city is you actually have to be enlightened, or at least want to be in that direction. All that means is that you have to know that your consciousness needs to develop. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean you have to be an enlightened person to be there, but you have to be at least going in that direction. And if you're just the classic stubborn human who wants to have violence or whatever it is, right? Whatever these other ideas we can put in our head about people who don't care about enlightenment, you just can't adapt. You can't adapt to that type of environment. It's the type of exposure it is, the type of tech, and not just that. I actually think you might be quote unquote ugly for them from their perspective. They might be like
Mm-hmm.
off-put by thoughts that are violent, or maybe have a self-serving interest. I don't want to create morality behind what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to point out that we do have to kind of raise up our station within ourselves to embrace this. And then when you do, you have access to their tech. And I'm convinced of that from a lot of the contactees I've reached out to and talked with, and a lot of experiencers, people who have had their own idea about what some of this is moving forward. And yeah, the picture is all consistent. And I'm convinced their tech will be helping us move into a new space of great unveiling of our own personal
Mhm.
unveiling. So when I say you'll have access to all your past lives, you'll be able to see them, and you'll be able to go into your past lives and say, oh my God, I existed, 1500 years ago, and I was this type of priest for the Aztecs. Holy moly. And then you get to look into that and to analyze that. And you can go back and I'm pretty certain you could do some crazy things with their tech, like be able to plan your next life, these types of things. And yeah, and you'd be able to, condense your energy and move into other types of dimensions. And I know they explore. They're explorers as well too in these other realms. And as far as I'm aware, part of it was that they want us to join them to do those types of things. And so they want like partners and friends. These guys are much more benevolent, friend-like
Mhm.
than humans understand. And I think our tendency for violence, our tendency for self-protection is the stuff that actually keeps us from opening up to this higher
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And as this is just my understanding, but that is, the people on Earth who are what we would call psychopathic, they lack the capacity for empathy and compassion. They also lack the creative abilities. So those of us who have empathy and compassion, we actually suffer for those gifts because we have
Right.
these
Yeah.
intense emotions and feelings, but we also have the technology, the creative technology to go places and do things that those other humans, they have no idea about. They can't even imagine it, and they think they've got it all the power. But actually, I think, Jeff, we have all the power when it comes to Earthlings. Now, I just want to mention we have a few minutes left.
Sure.
I was wondering, this is all fascinating stuff, absolutely fascinating. I'm wondering if you want to talk a little bit about what does ET want? What do they want from us? Why are they here? I know you've talked a bit about the Enlightened City and the hybrid program and things like that, but if you could boil it all down in the last, 5 or so minutes, what do they actually want? Just so that people can get an understanding and help to alleviate some of their fears, which I know
Yeah.
you already have, but a little bit more would be great.
Yeah. So I don't know that I can boil it down. I think the picture is huge. I think the picture is staggeringly huge. And and of course the basics of what we could say what they want is us to transition to this smoothly. So
Mhm,
I think quote unquote that's what they want, is for us to transition
mhm,
to this smoothly. But what's really going on, and I think that that picture is huge. I think it includes the birth and death life cycle. I think it
mhm,
includes a grand, large perspective that maybe the planets are actually stages for birth and death life cycles, and we are collapsing, and we may not see it that way, but they do,
mhm,
and we're taking the planet with us, and they won't let that happen. And so there's this kind of grander picture, and there's something bigger going on where I'm 100% convinced that part of the birth and death life cycle is you come into Earth to develop, and then that becomes part of your development. All that struggle you do is retained. And what are you struggling for in all your lives? Every single life you've ever had, you may have been struggling for one thing or another, but really in the end, you're always looking for peace. You're always looking to be loved and to love. And yet
mhm,
you might distort it through psychopathy. You might
mhm,
distort it through all the ways in ancient history we could do that. But in the end, we're always just looking for love. And what is the core of that? Is to become aware of it. So then it's what's very interesting when you look at NDE research, you're looking at a whole bunch of desire for awareness, grander and grander awareness of your intentions, that yeah, you have been looking for love and that's why you're acting those ways. Or yeah, you are trying to express love and that's why that person did that thing to you. So then the entire dynamic, which seems to be of interest in the afterlife, is all about gaining awareness. Well, this is very interesting. If we are linked to the unified field and the entire birth and death life cycle is actually about doing something which transfers over to the unified field, then we're helping the unified field gain awareness. And this may have been the entire game that the Mantis created. I'm actually convinced that this is the big picture. And yeah, it's a stage meant to, develop souls. And then there's this drastic turn that's going to happen, and that includes the environmental damage of the planet, that they're just like, nope, you can't do that. And there was a plan that's created to merge two societies together, one being the originating entities of these great aliens, which I'm convinced share planet Earth with us, and then there's us, and then we're basically merging the two together, which is the purpose of the hybrids. And I think that they see it as like, congratulations, celebration time, and you did it, you spent thousands of years here, woo, and you made it, humans. And I am certain it's meant to be a celebration of, you're free now, you get to be in your bodies while also be in utopia simultaneously. I'm convinced that it's meant to be that, and it's because it's the end, and there's almost like, there's one contact event that I think summarizes things really well, and it's this guy who was in Peru. I wish I could remember the name. I have too much information in my head all the time now. Linda Moldhow had him on his show. He was either an architect or a biologist, but he was, he was a scientist. He would never just randomly say these things. And he walked into a portal, or was pulled into a portal while at Machu Picchu. And then he was gone for hours, and the police were involved, and his wife was concerned. And then he comes out, and he's basically comes out of a portal, and he basically says, these entities were telling me that they made humanity and don't know what to do with us anymore. So there's like that actually seems to hit with what's going on here. That there's a degree of like, hey, this was all meant to be something. It's done. So hey, we're now switching it over, and you're free. You're able to do it, but you need to merge with this other thing to be free. And that other thing is gray aliens mixed with mantis tech, is what I really think our 3D brain can frame it as. But it's much more beyond that. And those are just human words. Even those words I tell you are just human words, because the dimensional stuff isn't even frameable in our brains. And so that's what I think is going on. It's the bigger picture, and it's still unraveling, but it does seem to be all interlinked.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. And it's interesting. At one point in my life, at a crisis point, I asked my spiritual guides, what was my purpose for being here? And the answer was simple. It was sort of simple. It was, my purpose for being here is to love and to allow myself to be loved in return.
Beautiful.
The catch was I had to find out what love meant. And we're given a very distorted image of what love is.
Yeah.
And when we understand what love is, it involves all kinds of things, like being patient with each other, having self-control, being kind, being mild, staying calm, all of those things. Like they're what we consider the virtues. And it takes a lot of work to exercise them. But oh my God, does the world ever change? And there again is, for me, evidence that we're living in a holographic universe. Because when I practice the virtues, which I do every day, not always 100% perfect at it, but I practice every day, and my reality shifts, Jeff, in ways that I never even dreamed possible. So I think you're right on the money with all of this. I want to really encourage people to check out your book, and understand these principles, because if we do, then we're not going to be in as much shock and awe once we start finding out, oh my God, Jeff was right. We're sort of prepared, and we can start to create a framework in our own minds to be ready for this. So fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show. I can't wait to have you back. Now, I'm wondering if you want to spend the last few minutes telling people about you, where they can find you, about your YouTube channel, what you're doing on your YouTube channel, where they can get your book. Of course, the links will be below, but for those listening on audio, it's good to hear you express where they can find you as well.
Yeah, you got it. Thank you, Karen. So my name is Jeff Selver, JEFFSELVER. And you can find my website is my name, Jeff Selver at jeffselver.com. And my email is jeffselver@gmail.com. And yeah, I have a YouTube channel. The simplest way, you can either search Jeff Selver on YouTube. It'll come up. My channel will come up directly. It is just called Jeff Selver. I make everything so basic and simple. And it's also linked on my website as well too. And yeah, my YouTube channel is where I put out a lot of my content. I do a lot of exploring of my own, of what happened to me. Every contact event is a rabbit hole. Everything they did with me over the 26 contact events, I saw a dead cow on a craft. So like cattle mutilations are linked to them. Like they're giving me little bits of information from different parts of my contact events. I interact with the man in black. So there's all these different things that occur as if they're able to hint to me that at a later time I'd be able to go down rabbit holes and discover and learn more about the phenomenon. And I had a whole series where there was crossovers with missing 411 with my stuff. So then I do a presentation on that and I put it on my YouTube channel. The last one I did was how the afterlife's connection, exploring the afterlife's connection to the phenomenon. And again, linking up all this near-death experience research with, people's experiences on craft. And there turned out to be tons of links. And so stuff like that gets explored, and great. And so very happy to share this information out with people. And Karen, thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Oh, you're very welcome. Absolutely my pleasure. And thank you to everybody out in the live chat. Lovely to hear from you and have your participation. I appreciate each and every one of you. And I want to thank also those that are watching the replay and those that are listening on audio. You all matter to us. And again, Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show. And love to have you back. I think you're going to be on the Aliens and Angels podcast towards the end of December. I'm looking forward to that. We're going to have a panel.
Yeah.
And so all good. So everybody, I hope you have a wonderful week. And take good care of yourselves. And we'll see you next week on the Quantum Guide Show. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for the Quantum Guide Show. Become the change that you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to my YouTube and other channels at Karen Holton TV. Click the like button, leave me a comment, and share this podcast with your friends. Check out my website at www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you will find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton and also the Aliens and Angels podcast on all audio platforms. Until next time, keep up the good work.